If you should happen to use the heating functionality on your bathroom exhaust fan, provided that it has it, you probably want to take this time to go ahead and wipe down the elements as well, because chances are you've knocked a lot of dust and crap loose on them, and when you next turn the heating on, it's going to smell like burning. And if you've forgotten that you cleaned your fan recently, you may become unnecessarily alarmed by this. So it certainly can't hurt to go ahead and clean this off. You probably just want to use water to clean this, or just a mildly damp rag or paper towel again, because some cleaners leave behind residue that will also produce a burning smell when your elements start to heat it up and cook it off of there. After you have finished with everything else, it's time to turn to the oiling department. This is probably as close as I will ever come to a paid product placement here on YouTube, and I'm not even being paid to say this. This is just the honest-to-goodness truth. If you spend a lot of time around your house, or even a moderate amount of time oiling things with that accept general-purpose oil, and what better way is there to spend the weekend, really? You owe it to yourself to get one of these Zoom Spout oiler things. They are just so incredibly handy, and they include some high-quality oil. You can also refill them with your own oil later when you've managed to empty them. They cost around $2 or so it's certainly not all the money in the world for something that will very soon pay for itself the first time you have to oil something that ordinarily involves a painful amount of contortion to get at the point where you actually can, such as one of these cheapo Broan new-tone exhaust fans that I talked about earlier. Now, in the case of this exhaust fan, no such contortions are necessary. This little motor was designed to be serviced and lubricated as opposed to start sounding like it was going to be threshing wheat or working as part of a shaker table or something. And the oil holes on this motor are right here for the rear bearing, and then the other one for the front bearing should be directly across from it, and it's right in there. Now, I can't operate the camera while I'm doing this, but all I have to do is take this oil right here, take the little cap off, and put a few drops down each one of these holes. Now, sometimes if a motor gets to have a lot of age and mileage on it, you might need to take it apart, because some older motors, and I'm unsure about this one, actually used a piece of wicking material to hold oil against the operating surface of the bearing and to deliver new oil as it was added. Over time, those can get plugged up, and sometimes you need to take the little motor apart and replace them. This motor, interestingly enough, does not look like it would be a lot of fun to take apart, because it looks like it's made with bent-over tabs to hold it closed. Still, I'll bet if you were careful, you could probably coax it apart. Hopefully, I never have to find out. As soon as you've finished oiling your motor, give it a minute or two to let the oil run down to the bearings. Then, you're almost ready to go ahead and put this thing back into place and hook it all up again. You're almost ready to start putting things back together again. But before you do, before you go near the opening in the ceiling, make sure that none of your helpers, especially if you have a bizarre fur head or a key keeper around, have turned the power on to your exhaust fan. You don't want a shocking surprise when you're this close to being done. Before you put your exhaust fan back in the hole, go ahead and clean out the housing in here, because it's probably got plenty of dust in it. Now, since there is electrical wiring up in here, you probably don't want to use anything that's moist or damp or wet, because even though the power is supposed to be off at the wall, remember what I said earlier about some people being less than totally inspired electricians. They might do something that you'll come to regret. There's a little flapper in there that leads to the output. And then when you've brushed this out pretty good with just a dry cloth, you're ready to start thinking about putting the exhaust fan back into place, which is usually pretty easy to do. Assembly is generally the reverse of disassembly, so if you had one of those other fans like I showed you earlier, you would pivot the edge that was the last to come out, you would put it in first. In the case of this one, you gently get it close to being in position, reconnect the 6-position connector for the electrical wiring, and then get one of your wing nuts, push this up into position over here, whichever way you'd like to do first, making sure that your electrical wiring does not become entangled in the fan, although there is plenty of room to work in this box. And then go ahead and fasten your other wing nut. Then you can move to putting the grill into place. As you can see, I'm just about ready to go ahead and put the first wing nut in. With the fan and lamp assembly here back in place, I'm going to go ahead and give this fan a quick flick to make sure that it's not hitting any wires or anything. I'm also going to take this flashlight and look up in there at the wiring and make sure that it is definitely safely out of the way, which it would appear to be. So, with that done, I can go ahead and put the light bulbs back into place here. I'll tell you what, normally I'm none too fond of compact fluorescent lights, especially the first ones, which seem to have a lifetime like a marshmallow in a fire. But in this application, they're a godsend because this fan puts off a pretty fair amount of vibration. And speaking of vibration, you definitely do want to be sure that if your fan has some retaining wing nuts or something similar like this one does, that you've got them tightened pretty snug, because otherwise this thing might vibrate itself from the ceiling, loose from the ceiling, and come down and give you a bang on the head right after you've gotten out of the shower or we've finished up whatever you're doing here in the bathroom. So make sure those things are plenty tight. If all this stuff checks out, it's time for a test to make sure that everything's working properly. So here's the first test of the nightlight. Well, it seems like I may have burned out the nightlight by handling it, or maybe it's just loose. We'll see here. Nope, looks like I burned the little fella out, so I have to replace it. Alright, but the main lights are working, and the fan is probably working too. There's definitely some dust in there. But listen to how nice and smooth that's running. Again, these modern exhaust fans, they really can't hold a candle to that kind of operation. That's a nice and smooth operation. A little bit of a vibration in it, but there always has been. You can see it in that light socket over there maybe. It looks like it's time to go ahead and put the grill back on. Oh, there went my flashlight. And there, folks, is the finished product. Looks like I knocked a little dust loose into the light. I can see it, but the camera can't. I went ahead and I tried to fix the El Kabong job that someone did in the grill there. I'm not really sure how that happened. With this thing all put back together again, it's running very nicely. So it definitely was overdue for service. Now, how often should you do this? Well, realistically, you're probably only going to do this like every 5 Christmases or so. But if you can, try to do this at least once yearly. Your exhaust fan will definitely thank you.